You know how it is these days. You want to get a handle on the big, complicated stuff, but without your brain feeling like it just ran a marathon. Conspiracy thinking, it's definitely one of those big things. Seems like it's popping up everywhere. So for this deep dive, we're trying to cut through some of that noise.
Yeah, we're taking a close look at this rising tide of conspiracy thinking in 2025. Like, where's it coming from? And well, what could it actually mean for all of us?
Exactly. And our guide for this is a pretty interesting piece, excerpts from a report called Conspiracy Thinking Debate Report.pdf. And inside, they've got this debate script. It features AI hosts, actually,
Sure.
hashing out different angles on the whole phenomenon.
Right. So our goal here, our mission, if you like, is to pull out the core arguments, the key insights from that AI debate. We really want to get to the heart of why conspiracy thinking seems to be gaining traction and, what the potential ripple effects could be down the line.
Because what this report lays out are two very different ways of looking at this whole thing. One perspective argues that what we often label conspiracy thinking, it can sometimes be a sign of healthy skepticism, almost like a natural reaction when institutions we rely on, stumble or fail us.
Mm-hmm. And then
Yeah.
the other side of the report sounds more of a warning note. It cautions against the dangers of, like, unchecked conspiracism and how it can really fracture our shared understanding of reality.
Okay.
So maybe let's start by digging into that first idea. Conspiracy thinking as a form of healthy skepticism.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that. This viewpoint in the report, it suggests the jump in conspiracy thinking isn't always, irrational. It can actually stem from a breakdown of trust.
Right.
In those core institutions, government, media, corporations,
Right.
the ones that are supposed to be the bedrock, sort of.
And to show why that trust might erode, they point to some pretty significant moments in history.
Yeah.
The report uses these specific historical events to really ground this idea.
Mhm.
They bring up the Tuskegee syphilis study, for instance,
Oh, yeah.
which was just a truly disturbing example of authorities deeply betraying a vulnerable population over decades. It's a stark reminder, isn't it, of the potential for institutions to act unethically with really severe consequences.
Absolutely. And the report doesn't just stop there, right? It also highlights things like the Pentagon Papers and the Snowden leaks.
Yeah, those pull back the curtain on significant government deception, showed a pattern of information being withheld from the public.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture,
Well, these aren't just isolated incidents, according to this view. The report also touches on times where major media outlets face scrutiny, citing things like the reporting in the lead-up to the Iraq War or the financial collapse in '08.
right?
When these key sources of information of stability falter, well, it's not hard to see why people might start questioning the narratives they're being fed.
It really clicks, doesn't it? When the entities you're supposed to rely on let you down sometimes in really profound ways. You're naturally going to be more receptive to alternative explanations.
Mm-hmm. And the report even brings in a psychologist's perspective here, Karen Douglas. She suggests these kinds of beliefs often bubble up from feelings of, like, powerlessness, uncertainty, and, crucially, that lack of faith in those very institutions.
That raises a really interesting point, though. How do we distinguish between that maybe understandable skepticism and something that could be more damaging?
Well, the report emphasizes that questioning things is actually vital, in a healthy society anyway. It serves as an essential check on those in power.
Like Watergate.
Exactly. Think about Watergate or the MKUltra revelations. Those were cases where asking tough questions ultimately brought important truths to light.
Yeah, that inherent right to say, hold on, show me the proof.
Yeah.
It's so important. And then the report gives this specific example. They call it labeled fringe support,
Ah, yes.
which is the belief that global elites are secretly manipulating world events through groups like the World Economic Forum, the WEF.
Right. Now, the report is really clear here. It labels it as unproven. There's no solid evidence presented to back this up.
Oh.
However, what this perspective argues is that the fuel for these kinds of beliefs, it comes directly from that erosion of trust we've been talking about.
Makes sense?
When there's a perception of, opaque influence, decisions being made behind closed doors, it can create an environment where people get wary of official narratives and start looking for hidden agendas.
Okay, so that gives us one side of the story pretty clearly laid out. The idea that conspiracy thinking can be a response to broken trust, maybe even a necessary part of a functioning society. But the report also paints a very different picture. More troubling, honestly. Let's delve into what they call conspiracy culture.
Yeah, this opposing argument suggests that while healthy skepticism is crucial, the kind of conspiracy thinking we're seeing a lot of in 2025 It's morphed into something quite different. It's described in the report as weaponized confusion.
Weaponized confusion.
Yeah. The idea is that critical reasoning takes a backseat to, well, paranoia. And our ability to agree on basic truths start to fall apart, often along tribal lines.
That's a really striking way to put it. And the report doesn't shy away from the potential negative impacts, does it? It specifically mentions beliefs around QAnon, the idea of 5G mind control, even the flat Earth theory, making the point that these aren't just harmless, quirky beliefs floating around.
No, and what's particularly concerning here is the connection the report draws between holding these beliefs and actual tangible harm. In the real world, they point to instances of violence, targeted harassment, and even just a general withdrawal from participating in civic life. When people become deeply entrenched in these alternative realities, it can have serious consequences for society as a whole.
And for a really stark illustration of those real-world consequences, the report points to January 6th, the attack on the U.S. Capitol.
Right. That event was heavily influenced by completely unfounded conspiracy theories about a stolen election. It's a powerful and unsettling example of how these ideas can lead to concrete, dangerous actions.
Yeah, it really is.
And to highlight how widespread this lack of trust has become, the report references a 2023 Pew study.
Okay.
That study found that a significant chunk, 47% of Americans, believe the government is hiding major information from the public, most of the time.
Wow, nearly half.
Nearly half. Now, as the report rightly points out, while this shows a major level of distrust, that distrust in itself doesn't give us a free pass to just abandon facts or, embrace claims without any evidence.
That's such a crucial point to underscore, isn't it? Because as the report emphasizes, our core societal structures, things like science, credible journalism, democracy itself, they all rely on some fundamental level of shared understanding about what's real and what isn't. If that common ground erodes, it becomes incredibly difficult to function collectively.
Exactly. And on this point, the report includes a pretty sobering warning from author Jonathan Rauch. He talks about us potentially losing the ability to agree on how we know things.
How we know things.
Yeah, calling it a crisis of civilization. It really underscores just how fragile our systems can be if we can't find common ground on facts and evidence.
It's quite scary when you put it like that. And mirroring the healthy skepticism side, this part of the report also includes a specific concern labeled fringe concern.
Ah, yes, the AI and algorithms point.
Right. The worry that artificial intelligence and algorithms are actually making the problem worse by amplifying conspiracy theories and maybe even suppressing accurate information.
What's interesting here is that the report acknowledges there's some basis for this concern.
Yeah.
We know algorithms can have biases. They aren't always neutral in what they promote.
Sure.
However, it also points out that AI is also being developed and used as a tool to actually combat misinformation. So it's a really complex picture. Technology as both a challenge and potentially part of the solution.
A double-edged sword, then.
Kind of, yeah, in navigating this whole information age.
Okay. So we've looked at these two contrasting viewpoints that the report lays out pretty clearly. As we start to sort of wrap up our exploration of this source material, what are some of the key points where both sides maybe find some common ground, or what's the big takeaway?
Well, the report ultimately highlights a really important truth, I think. Conspiracies do happen. History gives us plenty of examples. That's undeniable.
Right.
But equally true is the fact that verifiable evidence and facts exist. The real challenge, as the report sees it, is figuring out where that line is between healthy questioning and harmful conspiracy thinking.
Yeah.
And maybe even more challenging.
Yeah.
Who gets to decide where that line should be drawn?
It's a deeply complex question, isn't it? There's no easy answer there. And the report concludes by sharing the final statements from those two AI-generated hosts, which I think really captured the central tension we've been exploring.
Absolutely. The first AI host, representing that viewpoint of healthy skepticism, states, "Trust is earned, not given. Questioning power is the duty of every citizen."
Pretty straightforward. And the second AI host, voicing the concerns about conspiracy culture, counters with, "Skepticism without facts becomes delusion. We need critical thinking, not chaos."
Critical thinking, not chaos.
Yeah.
And the report's final thought really ties it all together, observing that the information age, while offering incredible access, has also brought a great deal of confusion. And the choices we make moving forward will really shape the future of our democracies.
So as we bring this deep dive to a close, it's clear we've examined a really significant tension here. That delicate balance between a necessary and healthy questioning of institutions,
Yeah.
and the very real dangers posed by conspiracy beliefs that lack any grounding in fact.
And as the source material made clear, there aren't any simple answers here. Not really. If you were hoping for like a definitive checklist to tell the difference, the reality is just far more intricate. It requires ongoing critical engagement from all of us.
So, which leads us to a final point for you, the listener, to really consider. In this increasingly complicated world of information, how can each of us actively work on sharpening our own critical thinking skills? How do we navigate this constant flood of information and learn to distinguish between healthy questioning and what might be harmful conspiracism, not just out in the wider world, but maybe in our own lives, within our own communities?
Yeah, and maybe think about what responsibility do we each bear in upholding a shared understanding of reality while still staying alert, still being vigilant
Yeah.
against the possibility of deception.
Definitely something to keep mulling over.